Well, on behalf of our family, we are just blown away. I can't believe I'm looking out at this number of people. We're just overwhelmed. And we thank you for being here today in a place that really meant so much to Ben. This place was a core for him. I think you might have seen, if you saw just a wonderful article in the paper, there was a little box next to it that said Ben planned his own memorial. Well, he did plan part of what you'll see today. He also, what they didn't tell you was that his plans included a statue of himself in our fountain. It included a retinue of strippers. And his pallbearers were going to be a group of midgets. I'm here to tell you none of that will be happening today. Ben showed up in our life very unexpectedly, and he left unexpectedly, way before his time. He was kind of like difficult that way. In between, he was incredibly unique. I don't know how many of you read the story of Crispin's Crispian, but in Crispin's Crispian there's a dog, and he's his own dog. Ben was his own dog. From the moment he was born, he was entertaining, he was a delight, he was a pain in the butt. Ellen had so much fun playing with him as a little baby that I couldn't get her to go back to work and earn money. She had to sit there and play with him. He was just that much fun. Now, I was looking through, the other day we saw an article, I don't know if you caught it, it was about punishment. And it turns out that 30% of the people in the world don't really respond to punishment. You can punish them, but they don't learn from it. 30%. Ben was one of those people. You could not punish him as a kid. If you tried to, he'd go, "Aw," and they'd say, "Okay." And then whatever he was doing would be so much fun that everyone else would want to be involved with that, and you couldn't even tell he was getting punished. That kind of attitude actually made him an ideal cancer patient. When he first heard about the word cancer, his first words were, and many of you know this, I guess I got an excuse for just about anything right now. Didn't flinch. And that kind of ability made him ideal to support. It's very difficult to support someone with an illness. Many of you know that. Most everybody knows that. It made him ideal to support. No complaints, no unreasonable demands. He was just there. He told cancer right from the start that it could do whatever it wanted, but it didn't matter. He was going to deal with it on his own terms, and he did, right to the very end. No one would ever want to go through what he did, and no one should have to. But Ben had that constitution to move through it with his own grace and his own style. First, he used a skill that he honed to perfection in this very school, and then worked on more in college. He was perfectly content to sit around for hours doing absolutely nothing. Then in sports, Ben was what they call a game player, not a practice player. He would show up to practice, but he was a game player. He wasn't like Nick or Tyrone, or Dave, who worked on their skills for hours, kicking a ball or throwing a ball or doing whatever it took. He just showed up, and then he was the guy you could depend on. He was the guy that you could make sure you knew you did not have to worry about him. Most important, I think, is he had a kind of quality that a lot of people who practice spiritual practices really want, and would really envy. And we never knew this about him until he had to deal with his disease. He could accept what life brought to him on his own terms. He could just accept it. I'm talking about true acceptance. I'm not talking about denial. I'm not talking about turning away. I'm not talking about trying to forget it. But he just welcomed it in, and then he let it go, just like that. He knew that resisting the obvious was a waste of time, and he was determined not to waste any of his time resisting. And then, for those of us who didn't quite have that skill, which is most of us, and anyone who tried to make it a dramatic situation, he would cut you down with a good one-liner And you would walk away thinking, what a schmuck I am. He understands. You could always grasp the situation, go with the flow, never resist needlessly. Also, accomplished spiritual masters in many traditions, in most every tradition, realize that the suffering that we experience in life is caused by holding on to things too tightly and to clinging to them. Ideas and things. You can't hold on to things too tightly. You can't hold on to ideas too tightly because nothing lasts. It all goes away. And so accepting things is the key to happiness. And maybe that explains Ben. Without being taught, without having teachers go through this, he just got it. He just got it. That quality, I think, really attracted people to him. No drama, no clinging, no scenes, never a scene. All this time he went through stuff that no one should ever have to go through, never a scene. His courage was ever present, and his style made it look very ordinary, made it look like something anybody could do. His toughness was incredible. There was one time, and many of you know this, when he had broken his leg, both tibia and fibula, and they were both snapped, and his leg is going the wrong direction. He's lying out there in the field, didn't shed a tear, didn't cry. Took him on the ambulance, not a tear. In the ER, not a tear. 4 or 5 hours later, his mother says to him, "That's too bad, you were having such a great season." And all of a sudden, he realized, it hadn't dawned on him before, he wasn't going to be playing soccer that season. And for the only time, his eyes welled up, one tear escaped, and then he moved on.